All right, everybody. Welcome to the stream tonight. And thank you all for being here. Yesterday, I was dealing with plane tickets, man. Ugh, it was a whole ordeal. Lots of hours spent on the phone with Delta, lots of hours spent on the phone with Delta's supervisors for their support. Finally got it all figured out. But their system was placing holds on my credit card, but not allowing the upgrades to go through on my tickets. And so tickets to Australia are not cheap. And doing that 3 times, I've got a whole bunch of holds on my company credit card. Luckily, that's not money spent, but it causes some real there's some real issues that can happen with that kind of stuff. Specifically, like having to go talk to people and figure out budgets and all that fun stuff. But that's not why we're here. I said Thursday I wouldn't be streaming. I think I will stream Thursday because I was thinking that Thursday was TinyConf, Friday is TinyConf. So I'll stream Thursday. Friday we'll be doing TinyConf, and then Sunday, Monday, and Thursday of next week, and we'll see how I'm feeling the Sunday after my trip. I'll be in Australia. I won't be streaming all next week. I'm going there for work. The streaming doesn't pay much at the level that I'm at. It definitely doesn't replace my job, so my job's always going to come first. So yeah, for next week I will be in Australia. I take off. It's crazy traveling across that international date line, and people who have done this probably understand. But so I take off Saturday and I land in Melbourne on Monday morning because we jump ahead when we cross the international date line. So Sunday is completely skipped. It's like 26 hours of flying, and then the crazy thing is take off Saturday morning on the way back, and I land Saturday in the afternoon here in the U.S. Because the day skips back. So I lose a day going there, and I gain a day coming back, right? Really, I'm not losing or gaining anything, but that's just the way the calendar works out. We'll see how I'm feeling Sunday after 26 hours of travel. I don't know what the jet lag will be like or anything like that. So we'll see how I'm feeling Sunday. I'll let everybody know that Saturday when I get back if I'll be streaming. But yeah, that's kind of the housekeeping stuff to take care of. Definitely come check us out at TinyConf. Very excited to see the conference. And then let's see what else. I don't think I've got anything else. So let's talk about where we are and what's going on. So right now, and let's pull up a Scala draw to help with this, right? So right now, basically what we've got is we've got components that depend on a store, right? And that store is provided directly in the component. And that's fine. But what if we want this component to be in multiple places and use the same data, right? If we keep providing the store with our vehicle, then the store goes away when we navigate away from the view and the view is cleaned up, right? So that's one issue we've got. And then if we want to provide it later and provide the same data for whatever reason, maybe a validation of some sort, things like that. How do we do that? And then, maybe what if we want to share data between this component and some other component? I'm not going to create more components because we all know how to create components, and we'll do some more component creating in the future. But what I want to do is, how do we decouple the state that we've got right now from our store, right? Because if I inject this store at a higher level, it's still tied to this vehicle info. But what if I wanted to compose this store in some way so that all of this data between the equipment and the vehicle was saved at the same time? How would we do that, right? How would we provide say, for example, that the VIN gives us information about the equipment, and how would we validate that the equipment makes sense against the VIN, things like that. So how could we do more advanced validation, like decouple the store from the data, so that we can provide the store that is a certain shape, but we can provide any store that will fill that need. And that's going to make our code much more modular. And the hint here is injection tokens is what we're going to be using. But we're also going to be using custom signal store features. And that's where the real power of signal store lies in this modular model. So let's start there, right? Let's start talking about a custom signal store feature and how we could go about providing that. And well, actually, before we go there, let's do this. Let's see, that's the CSS, that's that. So in the app component right now, we're just bringing in the state. We'll look at some interesting stuff here in a little bit. But for right now, let's talk about how we can move the state from out of the vehicle info and out of the vehicle details into another signal store, and then provide that signal store in a way that our details and our info understands, and provide potential save and stuff like that. So let's start there with pulling these stores higher than where they are now. So one thing we could do is we could take this store and we could provide it in the app, right? And then it could have a save method, and that save method could call the save method on the detail store and on the the vehicle store, and it could give us all of that stuff. But that doesn't solve the case where maybe we want to break the state out across multiple components and allow that state to exist on its own. But we want to treat it as one state and build it up as one state. But maybe we want to maintain it differently. So the real answer here is to take a lot of what we've got here and create a signal store feature. And so we'll go ahead and do that. And let's go to Control Tab, ngrx.io. No, it's not ngrx.io. Yeah, it is ngrx.io. And in the docs, we're going to go to the state, and we're going to go to signals and look at custom store features. Custom store features are really a function that returns a signal store feature. And you'll notice that signal store features look very similar to they look very similar to signal stores. So this has the same shape as a signal store. We're using with state again. We're using with computed here, right? There are other things we can do, like we can. This one is a with request state, so it's got special functions that we can use to set pending and things like that. So we'll take a look at those too, because we are going to use some updaters to make things easier. You'll see down here in the store when they inject it that they are calling patch state, and they're just calling set pending, and set pending is returning what we this request status state, which is defined up here, right? Request status state is a request state, and so we're going to be doing the same. We're going to create these partial updaters, and then we'll return stuff. There's more advanced updaters that we'll get into. We'll talk about, and there's also like the notion of entities within Signal Store. I don't think we're going to get into entities. Yeah, we're also going to get into this kind of stuff right here with the Signal Store feature, because we're going to need it. Are we going to need it? Yeah, well, maybe. We'll take a look. We'll need this eventually, and maybe we'll create. We should create a situation where this is needed. So we'll do that too. Yeah, that makes sense. But basically, it's a way to say that this store needs to exist within the context of another store that has a certain shape. So our details is probably a good example of that. But we're going to start with our info. So let's go ahead and close all tabs, and let's go into our info, into our state, and this is our store. We're not going to get rid of the store initially. Instead, in our state, we're going to add a new TypeScript file. This is going to be our vehicle-info.store.feature.ts. And this is a convention I use. We don't really need the .store. We could do .feature.ts, right? And typically, this is what I do is feature.ts. I'm adding the .store specifically for the project we're doing now to spell it out a bit more, right? That this is a signal store feature, but typically I'll just use .feature, and that's it. All we need to do to set up our feature is now we can just say, hey, export const. Or actually, we don't even need that. We can just do export function. And then here we can say with vehicle info. And that's it. All we need to do now is we just do return signal store feature. So we import that. And at this point, we can really just go into our signal store and take all of this, which is really cool. So we'll grab all of that, and we're going to put it inside of here. So there we go. We've now got our signal store feature. So our feature is now set up. So there. So I was thinking about providing an update function here. But we don't really need it because we aren't going to be setting the state specifically for this. We're going to be calling the update method directly. And so at this point, you know, our signal store is broken, but we can fix it. We can just go here and we can just say, hey, we just want with vehicle info. And that's it. And there we go. We've now provided a signal store that returns the same type still, right? We can still see the year, make, model, and we've still got the update method. But we've moved everything into this feature, which gives us some real power, which we'll see here shortly. Nixia! Oh, shoot. Thank you, man. I didn't transition over. Thank you so much for that. I seem to make this mistake every so often. I just really launched into things. Thank you for the update. I've been going about 15 minutes. So basically what we did is we took the signal store as it was, and we'll look at this when I do the source control for this. That's probably a good way to do it. And we created this feature, right? So we exported a function, call it with vehicle info, and you know we're following the same naming convention from ngrx.io. And then all we did is we took everything from the store that we created and we copied it straight over into our feature. And that's it. We didn't have to do anything special. And our store still works. We just provided with signal store, with vehicle info. And right, we've got the same look, which is amazing. Because now we can go back to this. We can see that our vehicle is still working. But here's the cool thing, right? Let's go ahead and just say, hey, we want, you know, we can say, let's do with computed, and we'll bring that in. Come on, there we go. And let's add some computed stuff in here, right? So we'll bring this down a line so that we aren't way out here. And we're going to bring in our store, and we're going to say, hey, let's return an object, and let's give it some computed stuff, right? So one of the common things that we do is a VIN last 6. And to do a VIN last 6, we just need a function. And so we can just say, hey, return computed, right? And then inside of our function, we just do this, and we do store dot VIN, right? And then, yeah, slice -6, and that's it. Is with computed not? What is it saying? Signal string is not assignable to type signal unknown. Type this to return signal string. I always forget, and let's just go verify this, right? So with our custom feature, within our core concepts, creating a store, injecting the store, consuming state, computed. Okay, so I just returned the computed. I don't create a function that returns the computed. So we can just really do that. And then we don't need that, and we don't need that. And that gives us our last 6, right? And so to verify that this works, Well, first of all, our computed works because the signal store is strongly typed and it knows the type here. So we know that we've got a VIN. And we're grabbing that off of the store. So if we go and let's go to our vehicle info component. So here's our vehicle info component. And by our VIN input, we'll just do last 6, and here, yep, that's exactly what we want. And so it already knows that the store has a VIN last 6 on it, which is weird because it's not picking these up. But let's go validate that our store is working by using the VIN last 6. So we can see that the last 6 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's do ABC 1, 2, 3, and you'll see that as soon as we blur, which is what our form is set to update on, we get the ABC 1, 2, 3. If we wipe it out and we blur, we don't have the last 6. We could modify that, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now our last 6 is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So we know that our state is working, and we can create, because we've got a feature here that provides the default vehicle stuff, we can inject that custom feature and then provide computed values based on that custom feature, which is really powerful. And that's going to allow us to move stuff up and out of our what do we want to call it? Our local service, right? We aren't going to be using the vehicle info store anymore. So let's make the same change for the details. And then we'll make the next move up, right? Right now, I'm actually going to move this with computed stuff out of here, and we're going to move it into here. And you'll see that the nice thing about store features is that they're basically copy and paste ready. And so by doing that, we immediately got the VIN last 6, right? And we can validate that it's still working. And so we get some real powerful benefits from features. So that's the first thing to take a look at. Yeah. I'm thinking ahead about how I want to handle some certain situations because there's some things that we'll run into. But for right now, let's go ahead and commit this so that I can go over, so that I can show you basically, well, that computed move was basically what we did. Let's pull main. We want to switch over to main, and then we are going to branch today, and this will be our stream June 25th, 2024. Yeah, we're good. Typically, I keep 2 branches, so we'll delete this first branch from the first stream. And now we're committing on our branch, so we can take a look. So the vehicle store feature, we just added it. The vehicle info store basically got changed into just this. And the vehicle info component, we just added the last 6. So let's just say we extracted store to a custom store feature. And there's a reason that we're doing this, and it's the modularizing, right, that we were talking about before. We want to make sure that we are modularizing everything and allowing things to be put together. So the next thing to take a look at is the details. Let's close all of these and let's go over to the details. And in the details, in our state, we've got the detail state for the store. So we're going to add a new TypeScript file, and this will be our vehicle-details.store.feature.ts, and those file names are becoming long, and that's why I typically will leave out this, the store. And we might even if we want to get sneaky, we might instead of doing feature, we might do dot feet or something like that. But feature is about the same size as component, so I don't know, half a dozen one, 6 of the other, right? I think I got that all backwards. But to get this, we just export a function. We just say with vehicle details, and that's it. Inside of here, we just return signal store feature, and so that's really all the skeleton we need. And then from our store, and this is the nice thing about Signal Store, is that it's so composable that you can start with a local store and extract to a feature with very, very little work needed, right? Because all I do is I just grab this, I copy and paste it, boom, we're now providing the detail store. Great. So we're now providing the feature. So here, all we need to do is just say, now we want the vehicle details, right? Let's import that. And this store became a lot smaller. The cool thing about doing features this way is that we can add the save method as a feature, right? We can add the get method as a feature, and so these methods can be added as features to other features. And it becomes highly composable, and it really comes down to how much you want to break things apart, right? But anyway, to prove that we're working, again, we can go here and we can see down here that we've got, everything showing up. And if we check and uncheck this, we're good, right? Check and uncheck that, we're good. So we can see that everything's working. And, if we make this A55, as soon as we blur, stock number exists on the vehicle. Never mind. If we make this a hybrid electric / gas, and we can do like an I4 again, right? Because we've got a really powerful gas engine on our electric hybrid, and we could even say, hey, this actually runs on French fry grease, and call it a diesel conversion, right? And so we can see that this information is showing up down here, so we know that our feature works. So we're still tied to this store, right? We're still tied to this vehicle details store. And that means that wherever we provide this store, our component, wherever our component goes, this store has to come along with it. And it has to be this exact store. right? Because our feature relies, or our component relies on that exact store. So lib state, our component, if we look down here, we're providing that exact store, which means that one of the things of making our stuff modular is that when something's modular, you think about something like Lego bricks, right? If we're drawing, we've got our bricks here, and we're putting them together in whatever fashion we want them to be put together in. There's some effort here to do that, but these can be put together. There are rules, right? Because the bumps on the top of all of these blocks specify the way that they fit together, and that it's a good analogy for how modular state and components work, right? Because there needs to be rules for how they fit together, or basically you're just writing another framework, and that becomes difficult. Hey, Angel, welcome to the stream. I'm doing well. How are you doing, man? Thanks for showing up. Really appreciate it. But yeah, these bricks. But there's another key component to these bricks. Is say we no longer want this green brick here. Instead, it needs to be blue, and it needs to have a fill on it, and it needs to be a hatched fill, right? And then maybe this one we want to change it to be red, have a green fill on it, right? And it needs to be a line fill, right? And so we didn't really change the composition of the bricks that we'd put together. They're still the same, and they still have the same rules. They still fit together, but this one is different from what we had before. It still provides the same interfaces. It still provides the same capabilities, right? It still fills the same piece, but it looks different, or there's something that's different about it, and that's the point of modularizing your architecture, right? This isn't something that you're going to do like a really in a really simple application, which is why it's difficult to create simple applications that really show off where this architecture works. This is something that you're going to do at a much bigger scope, where maybe you're protecting yourself against highly volatile, things that happen. Who knows what it is, right? And so you need to be able to swap this brick at any point in time, because something could break behind the scenes, and you've got to fix, and you can fix it and swap out the old brick with the new brick, and that that fixes it, right? Other situations where highly modular works really well is drag and drop, right? You want to give your users the ability to take the components, these bricks that you put together, and put them together in any way they want, right? Like maybe the users want their stuff to look like this, or maybe they want it to look like this, right? You don't know how they want it to look, but you want to provide them with the ability to put them together. There are rules on how things fit together, right? Again, the little knobs and valleys on the bottom of the bricks, and top and bottom of the bricks, but however they want to mess around with what you've built, your UI, right? Maybe through drag and drop. Maybe they want to put a side nav on this side of the screen. Maybe somebody else wants to move their side nav over to here, right? You're providing them with a way to put together your stuff, but in a modular enough way that it still works cohesively. And these aren't just simple things. There are other reasons why you might want to do this, but I think that illustrates the point, right? That the goal is to create these modular bricks that can be replaced at any point in time, and can be replaced with anything. So this provider here becomes a problem. And the reason that this becomes a problem is that we can't easily replace this, right? I mean, we could mess with the DI maybe and tell it, hey, when you encounter this, provide something else, and that's really what we're going to do. We're going to create some tokens and provide them. And so the first thing we want to do that is we need to create those tokens. There have been a couple of different ways to do that, but I actually like to export const, and we're going to comment this out. And we're going to just provide vehicle detail store, right? And no, we don't want the whole signal store. But this is going to be a new injection token. And so our new injection token needs to have a certain shape. And we're going to say that, yeah, this is just the vehicle detail store, and that's perfect. But right now, notice that our injection token is of type any. So we need to create a type that will work. One of the things that I like to do is create a mapped type that will help with this. So we'll start with the mapped type here, and then we'll look at where it makes the most sense to exist, right? And then go forward from there. So the first thing we want to do is we just want to create the map type. So we can just say type, and this will just do signal store t equals. So now we need to create our maps type. And what we can do is we can say key in key of t, right? And then we can map this over to a signal of type t key, right? And then we can import signal. And so if we do this, now what we can do is we can say, hey, type, vehicle detail store is signal store. Equals, and we'll do a signal store here. And I'm not going to do return type. We just can do vehicle details here. And when we do that, we'll see that this type now has the type, engine is signal of vehicle details VIN, vehicle details color. I actually don't like that. It should be the type of this. Oh, it doesn't know what that, well, no, it does. It knows what vehicle details is. So it should be, so VIN should be, see, it's doing vehicle details VIN, which here, like if I do type test equals vehicle details, and then I do VIN, we'll see that the type of test is string. Oh, is it? type of? No, because vehicle details is already a type. And that's why we're getting this, right? We're getting it as a value. So yeah, it's saying the initial type is string. I guess technically vehicle details could be reassigned, and that might be why it's showing that. What if I do no infer? And types can be difficult to figure out, right? Infer. So now if I do that, it's just going no infer. I mean, the other way we could go is you can say, hey, it's just a function that returns T key. Right, because that's a signal, and we aren't going to be doing sets or anything on it. This is really just to read. But yeah, it's still giving us that. I think I'm just thinking of like old school. It used to do it slightly differently, and we really don't need these two types. They were just demonstrative, right? We can really just go here and just say, hey, our injection token is of type signal store. Actually, that's not true. We can't do this, and there's a reason for that. So we'll do it with the vehicle detail store right now. And there's a piece to this that I want to show. So there we go. We've got that. And so now when we come into the vehicle details component, we can't have a provider here. But notice that our inject still works. And we get an injection token that's of type, right? And when we look at our store, it's a signal store of type vehicle details. And there. Oh, what is it? There's a way to make this nice so that it doesn't look like this. But you'll notice that in doing this, now our engine comes across as a signal that returns a string. Just a second. I need to take this. That's my manager calling. Give me just a second. All right, guys. Very sorry about that. That was just my manager calling to verify the dates when I leave and when I land in Australia and when I leave Australia and all that stuff. So needed to get that taken care of. One thing that I'm kind of annoyed of is I have my notifications turned off. So Windows doesn't even obey its own stuff. And that's a little bit frustrating. But anyway, let's take a look at a couple of problems that we've got. So one thing we've got is get state, right? Doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is that we aren't declaring state signal. And one thing we could do is we could potentially go back to our feature or back to our store here. And I'm curious if we just do, instead of doing this map type here, we just do state signal, and we import that. And here we just do vehicle details. Then I don't need that. And we're going to get some of the stuff that we need. So right away, I think that fixes some of our stuff. So now it's a writable. So we've got our state signal. If we go back to our component, we now have state signal, but we've got issues here, right, where unresolved function or method color. Inject vehicle detail store. Oh yeah, I messed that up because here I didn't change. No, that's right. Because my vehicle detail store is now of type state signal. So that store works. So here, what is it complaining about? The public property store of exposed class. Oh, yeah. So one of the issues we have here is that I'm not exporting this type. And so we're using a public method and we aren't exporting the type. As soon as you export the type, that goes away. So that's one thing that we can do to solve this. I no longer need that mapped type that I was thinking about. And so that's why I like to work through these things and not spend a ton of time on things like that. But so we've got this store, but really it's just an alias for the state signal. But we've got one issue, right? This update. And this update is a problem because pulling that off of the store actually wound up causing a lot of problems. So what I've found is that we can just use a type union. And here we can just say, hey, update. And that, but this isn't going to work because value changes doesn't match, right? So if we go look at the store feature, our RX method takes in a generator that's either the source is an observable partial this. No, let's see, and it returns an RX method. And so what we want to do is instead of just doing update like this, we can say, hey, update is an RX method, and we'll need to import that. Oh, is that not available? because we could do that. Rx method is not exposed. Neither is Rx method input. So, so we'll create our own Rx method. Type Rx method T equals and kind of. So if we take a look at the Rx method here, this is what I mean. We're basically just going to take this unscribable. What is unscribable? Well, unsubscribable. And unsubscribable exists, so we can just basically copy this, paste that, and the Rx input method, we need to go grab that also. And the Rx input method is just the observable or the signal or the input. And so we can replace that with this. And then we need to grab observable. And with input, we can just change that over to be T from our generic. And then we can import signal. Then we need to import unsubscribable from RxJS. And then we've copied the method over. And now our update is there. And if we go take a look, now our update works, right? Why did we do it this way instead of, some other way? The real answer is I tried a bunch of different ways to use the store. And if somebody has a good idea for this, I'd be happy to hear it. But when you use the store, you wind up creating other problems because there are undocumented things that you can grab out of the source that I originally was trying to use. But it wound up making my types way more complicated than they needed to be. And then when we tried to bring the types together, they really started to cause problems. So instead, because, well, the other thing we can do is this stuff doesn't need to exist here anymore. I typically add these along with the feature because they're going to be used with the feature. So there's that. And then we can take this piece out because we don't need it anymore. So we can just delete this. right there. So delete you anyway. And so now we've got one problem here that we're trying to grab this from the wrong place, but we can take that out. And then right here, we can just import it from the correct place. And now we're good again. And now we've got something that can be uplifted, so to speak. Because right now, oh, really? Do we not have? Oh, never mind. It's because it doesn't know what the state is, right? State signal this and update method. It doesn't know that state signal vehicle details has, those things on it. I don't understand, why it doesn't understand, because state signal does have that stuff. Anyway, like if we come down here in the constructor, we could console.log, boom, comma this dot store dot vin, and it doesn't know what that is. We'll come back to this problem. My types may not be good because this isn't helpful, right? It would be very nice if we could know what this is. What does it think exists on store? Just update, and that's it. Anyway, let's go look at the browser because we've got a bigger problem to solve first, and then we'll take a look at that problem, right? Actually, no, we need to solve that problem first because it's saying that color doesn't exist. So that's not a good place to be. So state signal state equals state signal writable. Oh, yeah, it doesn't know. It only knows that the signal state is there. So we need to add our type. Type. And here we can just do so we can do signal store t equals, and here we're going to do key of key in, key of t, t key. No, that's not what we want. We want signal t key. And here we also want state signal t. And that is, oh yeah, we also have to now say t extends object, and that might fix some of our problems here. And so here, now we can just say this is a signal store of that. And now vehicle store now has our values. We've also got our state signal, and we've got our update function here. So if we go take a look here, now VIN, we know that VIN is a string, and we don't have any errors here. So the state signal wasn't doing what I thought it did. And there, well, so we've solved that issue. We've got another issue, and it should show up in the console now. And it's the favorite of everybody. Wait, why is that? That shouldn't be working. Is my compiler not? Yeah, okay. I was like, that should not be working. Let's try building this again. It should be giving us the, hey, there's no provider for injection token, right? The classic R3 error. Store.navigation, engine does not exist on type vehicle details store. Oh, I've got a type and I've got a constant here. So what we can do is we can just call this our token because it's an injection token. And now if we go here, we can grab the token, right? So there we go. And now it's not as ambiguous. So our update method matches that. And our store is a vehicle detail store, which is a signal store, right? So we've got all of this stuff. Does that compile? It does compile now. So now we should get the error that I was expecting. So we're getting the null injector error. It doesn't have the R3 that it used to have in it. But null injector error, it doesn't know what the vehicle details token is. And the child query result is required, but no value is available. This is probably an issue because the template isn't compiling because of the null injector. So what we can do is we can go to our app component. And that would be in our apps. And probably the best way to do it is just to go to our app.component. And we'll just add here, we can just say, hey, const And we're going to say vehicle store equals, and we can just say, hey, it's a signal store. And we'll import that. And we're going to say with vehicle details. Boom. And our import is bad because we haven't exported it. So let's go back to our vehicle details. And here in our index, we just want to export star from ./lib/state/ from our feature. And that's going to give us our injection token and our store feature and all of that. So we've now got this in place, and we can fix this import. So we'll grab that from the new import, and there we go. And then the only other thing we need to do is add this to the providers. But there is one thing I like to do, and I like to do provide. Well, we need to add the vehicle store to the providers. So here, we're going to add providers. And what we can do is we can just say, hey, let's provide the app state. So we can just say with app state or provide app state. So we need to create this method. So we can just come up here and we can just say, hey, and I don't usually put these here, and we'll move them eventually. But provide app state. And our app state is a function, and it is going to return a providers array. So provider array equals, and we'll do that. Actually, we need a function. And so we need that because I wrote it as a function. So we'll get the providers there, and inside of here, we just return. And if we do an empty array, we're good right away. But we can also just say, hey, provide. Well, actually, we don't even need to do that. We can just say, hey, we want to provide the vehicle store right away. So we're good there. And then the other thing we can do, because we've imported from our feature this vehicle details token, we can say, hey, provide the vehicle details token. So we'll import that. We will import that. And then we're going to say, we'll use the existing vehicle store. And then we'll just say that, hey, it depends on our vehicle store. Right? And I don't even know if the depths is important, but I typically add it. But what this says is that this provider will be created after the vehicle store is provided. And so now we've provided, well, we haven't provided anything yet. Oh yeah, we have. We provided our app state. And so we're using the token. And now we've decoupled the token, the VIN from, we've decoupled everything, the token and everything, right? So now when we click on the sunroof, it's all there. And, you know, we could provide a different shaped state, and that's what we're going to do next. We're going to move the actual vehicle into the state and provide that, and we'll see, we're going to run into an issue here pretty quick that I intentionally left in place because I wanted to talk about it a bit. So we've now got our vehicle detail store in place, and there is a bit of what do we want to call this? Like, there is a little bit of boilerplate, right? But a lot of the boilerplate was just us figuring some stuff out. And actually, at this point, it would be good for us to make sure that we so we moved state to injection token. And that gives us some power because now we can provide the state at any level. So if we go back to our Excalidraw here, right? And this is, let's say this is our vehicle info component here. We have taken the state and we've moved it out of the component that's, you know, displaying that. We've actually moved it to the green layer, right? And so the green layer is now providing everything. But it doesn't have to be the green layer that provides everything, right? And that's kind of the power of this, because now that we've done this, you know, if we were to add another layer outside of here, you know, let's add another layer here, and let's take off that fill because we don't need it. But we could just as easily, you know, using what we're doing now, have moved this to this layer, right? Or if we composed another layer on top of this, we could move it to that layer. But this could live here, it can live here, it can live here, and that's the power of decoupling the state. And the way we accomplished that was by using the injection tokens. So this injection token is what gives us, this is, you know, kind of the placeholder. So this injection token is going to look like our with vehicle details. And for right now, we're going to use these things. We'll come back and look at creating types in the future. What I want to do is show us composing the state and what that means, and you know how we can use that. And there's some other things that we want to take a look at with composing state, like loading spinners that rely on other pieces of state and things like that, and how we deal with that. And yeah, we're making okay time. We've got a little over 45 minutes to go, and we'll have a composed state here pretty soon. And then we can talk about, well, at that point, I've got the code that I need. And so on Thursday, when we come back, we'll start talking about deeper topics that I'm not going to be covering in the presentation. Hey, Santosh. Yep, I am live. Thanks for joining us, man. Welcome to the stream. Feel free to ask questions or make comments or whatever. Anyway, so we've got the details store has been converted over to some injection tokens, but we've got these helper methods that we need to figure out what to do with. And eventually we will probably look at composing these methods out of something else. But for right now, what we probably need to do is create another library. So right now we've got a components library and a shared UI library. Within components, maybe this is the right place to do it. What I'm trying to avoid is as soon as you create like a library called shared or utilities or something like that, you basically have opened up the ability for people to create God, God modules, right? And by God modules, what I mean is it has the ability to access anything. It has the ability to do everything. It knows everything, right? It just grows to contain everything because people go, where does this fit? Oh, yeah, utilities. That's a good place for this to fit, right? Or where does this fit? Oh, shared, perfect. Shared is where this belongs, right? We don't want to do that. So instead, what we will do is we will use NX to generate a new library. And we'll call our library something that doesn't encourage that, right? So what we can do is we can call this signal store helpers, maybe. And again, helpers is dangerous, utils is dangerous, shared is dangerous, right? All of those names are dangerous. And so we want to try and mitigate the problems. Hey, good morning, Santosh. Morning. If it's morning for you, you're like East Asia or West Asia, right? No, East Asia. So good morning. I'm going to be in Australia, Melbourne soon. So in not too long, you saying good morning will be, I'll be same area, but I won't be streaming then, so it won't matter. Anyway, good morning. It is, it's getting on to being evening where I am, which is nice. Be nice to be done for the day. It's been a little bit of a crazy day. Not buildable directory. It's already putting it in the directory where we want it. Component signal store helpers. We aren't going to make it publishable. We aren't going to make it routable. There are a couple other things. We don't need that. We don't need that. Change detection. We're going to set on push just because compilation mode we're not going to worry about. Display block I'm going to leave off. Flat. I'm going to leave it as is right now. Import path. This, we're going to go at, and if we go take a look at our other imports, right? We don't have one here. Our app component definitely does. So we're using app modular state / something dot something. So we're going to do at modular state / and this is going to be our signal store helpers. Boom. Inline style, no. Inline template, we're going to check it. I don't think we'll ever add components to this, but we'll check it anyway. Linter, we don't. Yeah, we're going to leave alone. Prefix, we don't care about, but we probably should set it anyway. So we're calling this our mod state, right? And then our selector, we don't care about. Simple name, no. Skip module. Well, we're doing standalone, so we don't need that. Skip selector. We're going to skip tests because we don't need tests. We'll be writing tests eventually, but tsconfig is good, standalone good, strict good, CSS good, tags. This is going to be library and internal only. Because we don't want this library to be imported from anywhere else. And we'll talk about how we control this, in future streams. But I want to get things done for, so I've got code to show on Friday. And a standalone config, perfect. We can see that it's going to add a whole bunch of stuff, and that's fine. We'll go ahead and generate this. And once that's done, we're good. we're going to move these types into their own files. So there we go. We're good here, so we can go ahead and close this. We can close this. Now we can grab these two types. And we've created a problem, but that's okay. In our libs, libs components, signal store helpers. Inside of here, we're going to add well, first of all, we can get rid of this folder. Here's my delete, and the delete key should just work, so that's fine. The other thing is we're going to clean out this index.ts. We're going to leave it in place because it's being used. But what we want to do inside of here is we're going to add a new types directory. So we'll add a directory. This is going to be called our types. And inside of our types, we're going to add a new TypeScript file. And the first TypeScript file we're going to add is our signal store. We need to rename this because we don't want it to collide with the existing signal store. So this will be our signal store props right now. And we'll paste this, and our signal store props goes here. And then we can move, yeah, we're going to need Rx method in other places too. So we'll export this. And then we will also add another type and another TypeScript file. This one we're just going to call Rx method. And we will paste in our code, and there we go. And we need to export this type. And that's good. And then the last thing I want to do is I just want to add a new TX file. And this TS file we're going to call index.ts. We're going to add a new barrel file, and we're going to export star from Rx method. And we are also going to export star from signal store props. And there we go. So now we've got both of our stuff exported, but what we haven't done is added it to our tsconfig. So we can go to our tsconfig.base. And inside of here, we're going to go down and find our signal store helpers. And whoops, I was hitting the backspace there. I wanted the home key. And we're going to copy this, and this is going to be our .types. And so from the source directory, we just go to types and index.ts, and there we go. And so now we should be able to go back here. We don't need that one. So in this feature, now I should be able to import this. It doesn't know because it hasn't updated, but we can go here and we can say, hey, import. Oh, it's now signal store props, right? Signal store props. And here we can just say at modular state types, right? Oh, it's saying that wasn't used, right? This needs to be down here. This needs to be signal store props. That will make that stop disappearing. And here we also need Rx method. Boom. Why doesn't it like this? modular-state. Is that not what I called it? tsconfig base signal.store.helper.type helpers.types. That file not exist? That's the next thing to look at. Yeah, so that's the same thing. So if we go look at our tsconfig base, so here, if we go look at this index.ts and we copy the path reference, oh, we missed the libs. That's what we missed. So this should be lib here, right? Actually, let's just get it all. So shift all that, paste it. There we go. That should fix that, which fixes all of that, which in turn should fix this. Let's see if I need to restart it. So it built that, and now everything works great. So if we go take a look, our modular state is back up and running, and everything is working as expected. So we extracted our types out. Now it's time to go commit all of this stuff. So we'll commit that. Actually, I'm just going to stage everything and just say that we moved helper types to lib. And the reason we're doing that is that we're going to be using this lib in other places. And there's a good reason to do this. We want to avoid circular dependencies. And one thing we can do, we can say pnpm exec nx graph. And the graph will take a look at all of our projects, look at all of the dependencies, and see how they look together. So let's go ahead and grab that. And we'll put it here. So grab a new tab, paste that in, and there we go. So here's our graph. We can show all of our projects and see how they're all interconnected, right? I typically just exclude the end-to-end testing from my graphs because they're usually at the edges anyway. But we can see that modular state depends on vehicle details. Vehicle details depends on shared UI. So our graph is good because all of these arrows point down. And you know, if you read like architecture or design, you want your arrows to point down through your dependency graph, right? Go the same way. As soon as any of these point up, you're going to create a circular dependency at some time. Like if shared UI ever pointed at modular state, then shared UI would create a circular dependency, and that circular dependency would come either through vehicle info or through vehicle details to shared UI and back to modular state. Even though modular state isn't a direct dependency, or shared UI isn't a direct dependency, we've created a chain that has a circular reference, and there's two circular references there. So if we put like signal store helpers in modular state, for example, then vehicle details would depend on modular state, and modular state would depend on vehicle details. We've got a circular reference, right? So the other thing to kind of talk about here, and we can go ahead and close this graph and close this. I use NX graph all the time. It's one of the hidden tools in NX that I just love. and couldn't live without it. But the other question is, why did I create the second index file, right? So if we look, our single store helpers, we've got an index file here and we've got an index file here. And why didn't I use this index file? Why did I choose to create another location, right? Another import location in the tsconfig base? And why did I choose to put these in here? The reason for that is ESBuild doesn't do tree shaking quite the same as Webpack. In fact, Webpack is actually a bit smarter in the way that it does side effect checking. And this is a known issue in the ESBuild. Like if you go look at ESBuild's GitHub, they discuss this issue. And they admit that Webpack does deeper, and it does some they call it, it has some intelligence about where side effects are and where they come from, right? As soon as you have a side effect in your module, both Webpack and ESBuild fail, and they don't do tree shaking, so your bundles get rolled up into giant bundles, right? With ESBuild, it's a lot easier to accidentally trigger. It's a lot easier to accidentally trigger like side effect bills, where you'll wind up with giant imports, where something might only use, we might only use Rx method, but if this types library grew and the code actually became bigger, and there was actual stuff to import, the tree shaking wouldn't work. The other thing that's crazy is that it's possible that because we reference Rx method, it might roll up the entire bundle into our library, even though this code never gets generated in output. So the reason I do this is that we control, these will never be generated code. They're just types. So they're never going to show up in the final bundle. It's just a way to tell TypeScript, what things look like. And since they're never going to show up in the final bundle, we may as well put them somewhere where if, we accidentally cause a bundle to kick off, well, there's no code here. And, we can look at that in our bundles. We don't have lazy loading turned on yet. So one thing we could do, to kind of take a look at, bundle lazy loading happening, is we could go to our app component, and here we can defer both of these, right? So at defer you, and we will at defer you. And I'm curious, I want to run a quick experiment here, because I'm curious, is this different than this? And I've never run this experiment, so I'm very curious to see what shakes out, right? Haha, dad joke. Anyway, this chunk is, we've taken a whole bunch out. And this is a crazy thing, right? By just adding defer, notice how much smaller our chunks got. So we got two chunks. We've got this small chunk and this small chunk, and then we've got our main.js. And actually, these add up. There will be times where sometimes your bundles get smaller by deferring. And we can even test this by we can say, hey, pnpm exec nx build, and we can build our modular state, right? And this is going to run a production build for us, and we're going to get some better numbers on what will actually be given to our clients. So we can see that our clients will actually get a couple of chunks. So our main is 80K, right? We've got a 164K chunk, and we've got 17K chunk of CSS, and then we've got one lazy chunk that's tiny, right? And if we wanted to, we could take a look at what's causing this. Interesting. So Tailwind is complaining about some selectors, but I don't think we did anything. Well, we didn't. Maybe we did. I don't remember. We did has focus. There must be an empty subselector in there that's not being caught in our debug builds. But we can see that our initial chunk size is around, we'll say 240K. The transfer size is 65K, and then our styles wind up being 3.3K. So because we're using global styles and because we're using Tailwind and Daisy, our styles are a little bit bigger, but we're going to get fewer styles in the load. The other nice thing about using CSS and global styles is that we could potentially run Lightning and do some analysis and pull out the styles we don't need. That's not something we're going to do right now. But anyway, there we go. So I was going to take a look at what happens if we do that and get rid of that. I don't think much is going to change. And in fact, the lazy chunk is exactly the same. So ES build is able to recognize that, hey, these two chunks are the same, right? If these were inside of a if these were inside of an if statement and the defer was inside of that if statement, then it would have to bundle them separately. But right now, it's able to recognize that they both belong together. And I don't know. We'll leave the defer in. Does it actually do anything to my load? Like when I refresh, we get a little bit of flicker, right? Because if we take a look at our network, and let's go ahead and clear our network and then refresh, we'll see that these chunks come in here. So, and we can probably even see inside of here what our chunks are. So we've got our vehicle info, our store. So, there's a bunch of stuff here. And it's pulling them out of the file system, which is kind of cool. Vite is doing some smart things for us in our, and that's why our chunks are so much smaller here, because it's not including all of the stuff, right? They were much larger because all of the code had to go in. When Vite does this, it builds them just in time, which is a really cool thing the Angular team did. But then it also says, hey, you can grab it from here. And like it needs to pull in certain things, but it doesn't have to pull in all of the code. So we can see this is our vehicle info component here. Well, that's interesting. So where is our vehicle details? Very fascinating. So there's that chunk. There's another chunk here. And this looks like TypeScript stuff. That's what I'm going to call it. There's another chunk here. It's coming from Modular State. I'm not sure where the details is being bundled. We could take a look at it and do some bundle analyzers later. But for now, I'm going to leave the defer in place. I don't know. Maybe we'll take it out. It just feels a little bit weird. I don't know. I'm so torn here. I think I'm just going to leave it. It's not hurting anything, and it is providing some bundle benefits. Anyway, the vehicle details we pulled apart. The vehicle info we haven't done yet. Or do I have that backwards? Close that one, close that one, close that one. No, the vehicle details we did pull apart. So it's the vehicle info we need to do. So we'll close all tabs. We're going to go over here, close that. There's our details. So let's go ahead and grab our vehicle info, cancel that. Source lib state, and we're going to get rid of the store, and we're going to create our own store, right? So again, we can just delete this file because we don't need it. Delete you anyway. So the feature, we need two things, right? So we need to export our type, and yeah, this can be our vehicle info store. And so this is interesting, right? Because with vehicle info has a return type, and that return type, well, we can actually see it down here, right? The vehicle info store gets, like, we've got a store and it's an inner signal store, and it just like, so we could do this and we could say, hey, yeah, we're going to pull the store off of that. And does that work? That doesn't work. Why doesn't that work? Because vehicle info, return type, there's a store right there. But you can see that there's a whole bunch of stuff here. And there are helper features in Signal Store, but that's not what we want. We're going to make our store equal to, and this will be our Signal Store props. And this will be vehicle info. It's just vehicle. Yeah. So there's our props. And then we need our signal state. Oh, wait, we don't need signal state anymore. So the only other thing that we need is the update method. And so we can add that, and update is an RX method of that. We can import that. And then the last thing we need to do is we need to export const, and we can say our vehicle info token equals new injection token. And it will be vehicle info store, and that's fine. We can even leave it as vehicle info store. Boom. And actually, I don't want to do that. I want to make this token also. And so, you know, our boilerplate has been simplified quite a bit. And there's some ideas I have around making this even easier. But there we go. We've now done that. So the next thing we need to do is just go to the vehicle info component. And inside of here, instead of pulling that in, we're going to go down and we're going to grab the token. Well, we don't need the provider for the store anymore. And instead, we're going to provide a vehicle info token. We'll go ahead and import that. Signal ng form, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, that really doesn't make any sense, but okay. And everything's working except for the VIN last 6. And that's an interesting thing, right? Because we've got VIN last 6 is a computed. So we also need to add VIN last 6, and that is a signal string. And so we'll need to import signal. And I have some ideas around how to make this easier so that we aren't having to do all this boilerplate, but I don't want to get stuck in that yet. So there we go. Now everything works, but we aren't providing it, right? So now we go back to our app component. And in our app state, well, in our store, we can now also provide with vehicle info, right? And we can import that. Need to add that to the index.ts. So go here, index.ts, and export vehicle info. No, what was that? What am I doing? I'm just blindly trusting. It goes from there, and then it goes from state, and then it goes from the store feature. There we go. So now we've got that. Now we can import this. And there is an issue here that we might want to address. Our state is being exported with the component. So if we use our state somewhere where we aren't using the component, we're actually forcing those to be bundled together because of this index. And why are we looking at the app component here? We should be looking at this index. We should fix that because the state should be exported by itself, and then the index should just be components. That will allow smarter bundling. We can fix that later. I mainly want to get this working and then show some other issues that we might have. So right now we need to go back to our app component. So we're now providing with vehicle info, and we're providing our vehicle store here. But the other thing we aren't doing is we also want to provide the vehicle info token, use the vehicle store, use existing. Yep. And that's going to fix everything up. And so there we go. And now we can see that our vehicle store has a different shape than our tokens, right? It's got more info in it. And because of that, we can provide targeted state to the components that make up our modules, but we can also compose that state into a bigger state. And that's the benefit of decoupling our state using tokens like this. There is, some more that you have to do, right? Like you have to provide those tokens somewhere. And where do you provide those tokens? And when you provide those tokens, what do those tokens point to? So this vehicle store becomes important. But if you use provider functions, you can make it easier. This stuff I would typically put in its own file, but we're going to do some more stuff later. And this is just a good way to show, how we can compose our store. And And one thing that I'm really curious about that I want to take a look at is, can we make this signal store dynamic so that the values that we put in here are based on runtime configs? I'm really curious about that. That's something that we're going to have to take a look at in the future. Anyway, we have an interesting side effect here. And so if you look at our VIN here, let's change our VIN to be ABC up here. We can see our last 6 updates, but notice now that our VIN is updating here. And this is something to be aware of when you're composing state from signal store features. And this was something that I did on purpose. I left it in, even though I knew that it was going to be an issue, because I wanted to show you guys on stream what can happen here, right? So if we take a look at our vehicle model, and then we come up here to our details model, and we take a look at our details model. And let's put these side by side. And notice that we've got a VIN here and we've got a VIN here. Let's move that VIN up to the top just to make it more obvious, right? So we've got a VIN here, we've got a VIN here. Which one wins, right? The answer is, when we look at our component, and we can close this, right? Because we don't need to see that anymore. The answer really is that the one that wins is the one that's added last. So in our case, the vehicle details VIN is the one that's winning. That's not necessarily a bad thing, right? But we don't get 2 properties. There are ways around that we'll look at when we go to add loading spinners and things to our application. But until we do that, we just need to be aware that, this and this are 2 different things. And there's some other cool things that we can do now that we've got our composed store. And let's take a look at some of those. So let's go here and let's just add a pre-tag. And in our app component, let's just go protected, read only store equals inject vehicle store, and not this dot inject, just inject. And the other thing we can do is we can just say, hey, protected, read only all vehicle equals get state from the store, and we can import this. And let's call this all vehicle props, right? And so up here inside of this, we can say, hey, we want all vehicle props. And we're going to pipe that to the JSON pipe. And it looks like we don't have the JSON pipe in here, so let's add that JSON pipe. There we go. And the other thing I like to do is let's sort this. There we go. And this needs to be computed. Computed. Otherwise, it's not going to update when the state updates. So there we go. And now we've got that. And so now if we go take a look, we've got the year, make, model, trim. Year, make, model, trim, VIN, stock number, Oh, interesting. So these are the same. And it threw me for a second why these would be the same. But there's a good reason why this is the same. But we can see that they're both updating. And why was I a little bit thrown off? So if you go to take a look at the vehicle details component, right? The bottom of the vehicle details component, we're logging. And what is log? Log is the state of the store. Well, our store originally was only the vehicle details. That's since changed. And why is that changed? Well, it's changed because we're injecting the entire token. The entire token, right, is the existing vehicle store, right? So we're injecting the entire vehicle store. But when we deal with, or when we inject it with this token, we're saying, hey, you've only got certain things, right? You've only got the ability to, you've only got color, engine, things like that. You don't have the rest. And one thing I want to do to show you guys one last thing is let's just add a label here. And this label is going to be our VIN. And we will add or not a pre. What am I doing? Let's just add a span tag here. And this will be store.vin. Yep. And so we're good, right? But what we want to do, and one thing we could do is add a break here, so that we get a break. And now if we go look, we can see that, hey, here's our VIN, and our value. What we want to do is let's go to our vehicle details model. And we're going to take the VIN out. We're going to say, hey, you don't have a VIN anymore. And that's going to break some things, right? But we can do some stuff about that. So the next thing we need to do is we need to take a look at the store that goes along with this, because we want the store to still have the VIN. And how do we do that, right? How do we guarantee that this store still has a VIN? And one of the first things we can do is in the signal store feature, we can actually pass it an object at first. And let's go take a look at ngrx.io so I can explain this before. So in the signal store, and it's at the very bottom, custom store features, I think. Yeah. So notice here in the signal store feature, we can pass it an object at first. We can say, hey, there has to be computed or methods. But the other thing we can do is we can also say it has to have certain properties. And I'm looking here. So this has with state. With methods. So we can say, that it needs to have a certain state, and it's doing it right here, right? Well, that state is for entity states. I'm looking for the I think it's just properties or props. So let's see if we can do that. So prop So we could say, is it just properties? And here we can specify an object, and we can say, hey, one of the properties we want to have is a VIN, and it needs to be a signal of type string, right? And it doesn't like that. Oh, the other thing, this needs to be type. I always forget this. Where does the type go? I think it's here. Is it here? So this will tell us. My properties does not exist on partial store feature results. Method is input. So the type is in the right place. I remembered that right. Computed methods. Is it state? Is it really state? Maybe it is state. And so let's signal what? No, not let's signal. So basically what we've said for this signal store feature is that the only way it can be added is that there has to be a property on the state that is of types that has a VIN and is a string signal. I think that works. It's been a little while since I've done this, so I need to remind myself, hey, Tukes, welcome to the stream. You probably said hello a while ago. Sorry if I didn't get to you then. And can I repair for you your VS Code? Oh, man, no. Repairing VS Code is painful. And I'm sorry that you need your VS Code repaired. But man, yeah, repairing VS Code can be very painful. That's way outside the scope of what we're going to do in this stream. I'm very sorry, but welcome to the stream. Hopefully you're learning something. Anyway, what does this do for us, right? So if we go back to our app component, our signal store is already complaining. And it's saying that, argument, so we expect a signal with a VIN, and it might just be VIN string. But if we go look at the very bottom, argument of type this is not assignable. So type signal string is not assignable to type signal. Okay, so I did it wrong. String is not assignable. So it's not string. It's not signal string in the feature. It's just string, which is nice. So it knows to make a deep signal out of it. So we can say, hey, it's just type string. So now we've said, hey, our type depends on having a VIN in there. And this gives us some interesting power, and we already saw some of that, right? So like if I take this out, notice now that, hey, it's saying, yeah, we don't have string. And it's saying, you know, slices, the VIN of type string is not there. And, you know, VIN is missing in our empty type, but it's required. So we don't have a VIN. If we put this back, right, and we move this to here, even though this adds it adds it after we expect it. So it's very positional in nature, right? So to fix that, you know, we can just go back and put our info in place. And now because our info is providing a VIN, our vehicle details is perfectly happy. It says, oh, there's a VIN here. Great. And so, you know, our, oh, there's one other thing we need to fix. It's our vehicle details component no longer knows what a VIN is, which means we need to go to the feature. And inside of the feature, we also need to say, hey, we need a VIN, and it's a signal stream. And there we go. Now we've got our VIN, our update. If we go look at our component, it understands what a VIN is, and we're in a good place. And so it's these dependencies that can cause issues with automatically building the types. I want to revisit automatically building the types and making things easier. But now we have a fully composed state that isn't overriding itself, right? It compiles. And if we go take a look at our application now, you know, we're outputting stuff down here. So, you know, if I go change this to be like a, I don't know, like a 20, we'll make it a 1995 Ford Bronco XLT, you know, and we'll make it white. And we'll give it, I don't know, a trim of, I don't know what the VIN should be. We'll just call it Bronco VIN, right? I know that, like Ford VINs start with 1 FM or 1 FV, or, you know, so 1 FM, and we can do Bronco underscore VIN. And we can see, right, this is updating. And down here, we can see, hey, our full state is updating, but also the partial state that we're expecting here, and even our VIN, you know, where we were expecting it, that's also updating. And we can see, you know, we turned off heated seats. Heated seats is false here and here. And so now we've created a completely modular state, right? So our state can be composed of anything. And the cool thing about it is now our state can be composed at different layers. And there are other crazy things that we can do with state that even go beyond what we're doing here. So like in our app details, you know, what if we did, you know, function full vehicle, or we can do with full vehicle. And this is just going to be return signal store feature. And our signal store feature is just going to be these two, right? And then here we can just say, hey, with full vehicle. And now we've composed a state that's composed of a signal store feature that's composed of two other signal store features. And you can see where this grows, right? Because here we could even add, you know, this has a with methods, and or not with methods. We can do, you know, with computed, and inside of here, you know, we can return the store, and we've got our object that we're going to return. And inside of our object, we're just going to say, hey, let's return vehicle description. And that's going to be computed, and that's the year, make, model. Yep, great. And so now in our template, we now have the ability to, right here, at the very top, we can just say, hey, H1, and inside of here, we can do store.vehicle description. There we go. So now we've got our vehicle description on our store, well, our H3 is horrible, so our H1 is horrible. The reason for that is that we don't have the topography stuff installed. So what we can do is we can go, for right now, what we'll do is we'll just go to our styles.scss, or styles.css. And inside of here, we can just say, hey, H1 should be font size, and we'll make this like a 3 rem, right? So there we go. So now if we look, now we've got our 2022 Chevy Silverado, right? And if we change this to be like a 1999 Honda Civic and an SE, does Civic do SE? I don't know. But we can see right away we're already benefiting from this, right? We can do Toyota Corolla, right? And this updates, or we can do like a 2024. I don't know, what would we do? Like a Tesla Model S, right? And so we can see that, right? Like our computed, which is composed, is updating up here, and our stuff is updating down here too, and we're getting the entire vehicle, which means that we could add a save button and save the entire vehicle, and not just the pieces of state that we had before. So now we've got components that we can compose and put together in any way we want, right? Like it doesn't have to be in this way. We could easily turn this into like a tabbed interface, right? Where the first page is this information, the second page is the information down here, and there's a save button at the bottom that saves everything. We can easily do Delta type updates, right? But the really cool thing is that because we've specified how this fits together, and we're composing state, we're saying, hey, this piece relies on a VIN that has to be provided somewhere before. So the VIN is already collected by the time we get here. It makes a lot of things that were difficult in the past really easy once you understand the patterns. And this is really kind of the crux of what I'm presenting on Friday. So that was what I wanted to accomplish today, was really what we just finished. And I only went 15 minutes over. I was actually expecting to go over by quite a bit more. So I'm actually really happy with where we wound up. Yeah, we're in a good place. So thank you guys for joining me tonight, and thank you guys for yesterday I had to move the stream. There was a bunch of things why I didn't stream yesterday. There was issues with plane tickets. One thing that happened, one of my nephews was involved in a car accident, and he was in the hospital with a concussion. So there was a lot of things last night that it didn't work out, and so Thank you guys very much for showing up today and supporting. Thank you to everybody who just commented and lended their support in the comments. We'll be back Friday to dig a little bit, or not Friday, Thursday. We'll be back Thursday to dig a little bit deeper, and then on Friday I'll be presenting this at TinyConf, and then after that I will be in Australia for a week. So it will probably be middle of July after Thursday when I'm back to stream. But you guys have a great week. We'll see you guys Thursday. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about this stuff some more. This stuff fascinates me, and it is incredibly powerful what we can do with it. So definitely come back as we talk about what we can do with like loading spinners and things like that. And